Hey, I'm Moe Dunford. I'm an actor. I'm delighted to be having this chat.
Hi Mo, how are you?
Hey, Mac.
From the sunny southeast in Waterford to the less sunnier north side of Dublin at the moment.
Really?
So come here, what I ask of everybody I've spoken to. When you were a young lad, was this in your family, in your blood? Do you think, or was it something that you kind of grew into?
It wasn't something that I wanted to do or ever saw myself doing, but yeah, it was in my family. My uncle Liam was an actor,
Okay,
and he was in Glenroe when I was around five, six, seven, eight. He was in Glenroe, and Liam Stack is his name, Liam the Stack, and he was in Michael Collins. He played Austin Stack, De Valera's right hand man, and he was in all the scenes, in those fantastic scenes. He was smoking beside Dev. And I remember thinking at the time, what a unique job to have. And he was sort of, the creative artist around town as well. And he was, so he just had a different outlook. My uncle Liam. But it was never something I wanted to get into myself. But I always loved film. I always loved watching movies and being a jack the lad in school. So yeah,
and were movies a big thing for you? Like, was it a kind of a
yeah, they were. I like a lot of good memories with watching movies with my dad, stuff that was maybe too old for a six, seven, 8 year old to be watching. But I like the experience of, watching it with dad. He'd show me all black and whites, movies with John Mills and Richard Burton. I remember going to the cinema as a kid with mom and dad watching The Fugitive, with Harrison Ford, big Hollywood
yeah,
blockbuster. But I was probably six, and instead of watching the movie, I was when he jumps off the train, when the train's coming and he escapes, I was jumping off the seats because I wanted to be in the film. And I think as a child, that thing of whether you watch a play or whether you watch a movie, it's that part of your imagination that goes, "Oh, what if I could be in there? Or what if I could be in that?" So
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember actually. Sorry, you have to remind me of an experience. I wasn't a kid, but I think it was in college at the time. But the the Doors movie, Oliver Stone's Doors film is that. I remember
Val Kilmer.
go and see it in Savoy, and it's obviously a trip of a movie, all the color in. But I remember walking out of Savoy into a pissing wet O'Connell Street and kind of going, "All right,
Give me that any day.
yeah." But I suppose did like were you performative? Like, was there anything going on for you in kind of school like that would kind of or was it different?
Yeah, I think outside of doing the subjects and the schoolwork,
Yeah,
like my school life, my friendship with my mates, and that the bond or the brotherhood we had it was sort of performative when I was outside class. I was always sort of joking and getting a laugh out of them, and I
yeah,
enjoyed that because one side of my personality would be quite shy, and the other side of it, when the bell rings, you go nuts. And me and the lads had like a great time and adventures. And as I got a bit older, I was skiving off school here and there and just enjoying a little alternative sort of adventures. And I think one of the things that changed actually was in transition year, because a lot of my friends skipped, but my really close ones stayed with me, and we had a great year. And that was the year where we went over to London for the first time as our school trip.
yeah.
And I saw musicals. I saw Les Mis and I saw The Lion King, and they were wonderful. And then I think I got in. I wish I could tell you a cool story that I got into a barroom brawl and the director cast me because I looked like the character who got into a fight. No, I was into girls' school doing West Side Story. But having said that, the I was never really good at sports, and I would have liked to have maybe done more. But the team aspect and the collaboration and the
Yeah.
brotherhood, we were doing West Side Story, and when you're a jet all the way, all that stuff. You're never alone. You're always well protected. You're home with your own. When company's expected, you're well protected, and that kind of I still have it, but that kind of um, developed where you're in it together. You're in a company together. you're on stage together, and it's not about, it was a learning process, that it's, you're not alone and you can express yourself. Expression was important to me, and that was an avenue which I hadn't, it was a surprise to me. I did music, but when being with a group of people and having a laugh, be it on stage or making film, I was like, oh, this is something I'm interested in because it's fun.
And did you play music? Was kind of music a big part?
Yes. I used to be in the band, the cover band, with a cousin of mine and two good friends, and we did that for about 3 years. So getting up on stage and performing was that probably got me into acting. Yeah.
And could we go back then, kind of, so the girls' school hosted the
I wasn't in a girls' school. I was doing part-time.
Did the boys' school go over then and kind of take part in that, was it?
That's it, yeah, that's it exactly. Yeah, yeah.
That was
so
a whole other experience in itself.
Well, yeah, because sure, look, the only reason I auditioned for the thing as a 15-year-old who had no interest in it was my then girlfriend. We kind of ended, and she ended it. And she was a big performer.
Right.
So to audition for it, I had a ridiculous notion in my head that, oh, I'm going to go into this and I'm going to get her back and all of that crack. That didn't turn out. That didn't work out. I didn't get the part I wanted. I got riff. But again, for a school and a class that was predominantly sports orientated, you were into sports or you excelled in homework and school. The creative side or for acting wasn't really there except for this. So that was an experience being amongst a lot of like GAA lads doing that.
And were you playing, sorry, did you a singer or play instrument, or what was your kind of music?
I play guitar. Yeah, I play guitar. Just strumming chords.
Yeah.
And like since I've been doing acting, I found that I haven't actually been playing that much, and it's only in this time now I've picked up an old guitar I used to have. I ordered a few strings online. I've restrung the thing. Oh man, it passes the hours. It's great.
New album coming soon then, you know, the whole new string.
No, but a lot of people are probably delighted that I'm playing in isolation. Do you know what I mean? They're probably over the moon that I'm keeping away from them.
So the transition year and musical experience, and then obviously, you know, you're leaving school and kind of trying to decide, like, was there a kind of an idea of what you wanted to do, or did you have a kind of not a plan, but do you have an idea of what you wanted to do after school?
Yes and no. I had no big broad plan, but I wanted to try acting, but I think I was too scared to say it. And just to go back before West Side Story was, they did Shakespeare, they did Macbeth the year before, you know, all the boys' school, and the girls came up. And I remember being in the audience, and I remember sitting in the middle and watching my friends who were a year older than me going up and playing Banco or playing Macbeth. And I remember the sixth years, they had this kind of communal joint sound that they used to make when they didn't like something. It was like, and all of them, as herd mentality, would kind of make that sound together. You know, you couldn't even hear the words, but you saw your friends up there struggling and surviving and being brave. And I remember going, I'm the one in the middle here. Why am I afraid to get up there? So that's when it went off in my head, going, it wasn't a done thing to do. And some people, out of whatever mindset or negative mindset, were like, why would you want to be an actor? And I think that was the reason when I said, let's give it a go. Let's give it a go.
That's a very strong image of, you know, two sides of life, that kind of herd mentality of, you know, the pack with their kind of, you know, feral sounds to the lads who are kind of willing to step forward. I mean, that's, you know, that's at 15, 16 or 14, that's a kind of a brave space to be in.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. And I think that then with transition year, that gave me, I kind of braved up a little bit and I tried it myself, you know. But coming out of like leaving cert, yeah, I applied, I did arts. I wanted to do acting. And I remember having those really awkward meetings with your career guidance teacher. Say, okay, sign in your three ideas, your top picks. I was like, oh, I want to do acting. And she was like, no, don't say that. No, yeah, that's a pipe dream. Don't put that down. Put anything else other than acting. So I did arts for a year in Cork and UCC, and I lived in a house with maybe 7 or 8 of my friends from school, which in hindsight wasn't a great idea, but for the crack, it was mighty. It was
Yeah.
brilliant. And I signed up then. I sent off €50 to the Gaiety, and I applied, and I wrote down the reasons why I wanted to act, and I auditioned. I had one shot to audition. Although I could have went back the following year and the following year, but I got in with that audition. Yeah, I did I chose a piece from John B. Keane's Sive and a Neil Simon play, I think.
And so, like, your pals you're living with, you know, did they get a sense of that that this was kind of, you know, were you the actor in the mix, Jimmy? Were you the kind of?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was. I was the oddball for sure. Yeah, I was the oddball, and they'd all tell you that. But they were very supportive. You know, in some ways, they're like, you know, you'll never make anything of yourself as an actor, but they're being very honest, you know. And then a lot of them at the same time were being, go for it, because the only thing standing in your way is yourself.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
But there is a very, when you know, you mentioned a lot, and come as we get onto your career, I think it's kind of, and a lot of your work is kind of there, that sense of tribe and team, and that sense of, but also that kind of, there's a certain roughness or rough love around, you know, well, men in general, but young men in particular, that kind of, you know, they're behind you, but they'd be tearing strips off you as well, you know.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I was deep down, I think I was interested in that as well, having the fear but doing it anyway. And my dad, growing up, had a myriad of jobs, and he's done loads of things since he was a young fella. And I admired that he had adventures when he was younger, and I suppose we have a similarity that we don't like putting others in boxes, or we don't like being put in boxes by others. You know what I mean? That you are one thing, you can't be multiple things. And yes, that I felt that growing up. My dad was a counsellor and a psychologist, and he worked in Cork prison. He was the psychologist there and the counsellor. And my mum was a teacher. And growing up, they worked in a pub in Cork. They owned a pub for a couple of years, so I lived there. And, you know, meeting people over the counter and getting attitudes. And I think I was interested, looking back, growing up, of attitudes of why are people afraid of doing something different, and why are they the first to throw a stone out of fear.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see how it went.
That's
you know, I could always fail. I could always start again, but I wanted to give it a go.
Yeah, that's fascinating though. I mean, you know, the opportunity or the character around kind of growing up and having an interest in people, like living in a pub, is like, Jesus Christ, you know, an amazing opportunity to observe all sides of life.
Yeah.
Come here to me. Talk to me then about that move to Dublin. You know, that kind of, was that a big rip for you to kind of go, okay, I'm not doing this anymore now, and I'm doing this?
Yeah, it was, because all I knew was life down here in Waterford, and all I knew was school here and my friends here and that little bit of time in Cork. And Dublin was it was a big stepping stone of just finding your feet and finding your ground. And I suppose what I was taken back by was the mixture of people in my group in the Gaiety, like all facets, all natures, all personalities, and very open and very expressive. And I felt a comfort in that, because I thought that while I enjoyed being open and expressive down here, it was a different kind of thing, jumping into something completely new, you know, in Dublin. And the energy was great. I got into acting because I was interested in film first and foremost. But then, of course, when I joined the Gaiety and Patrick Sutton and the teachers there, you quickly found out that no, this is a tailor you for theatre and for film, to dive in, to be good with language, to be good with voice. And as soon as I went in there, I got a bit of a shock, because I realized, geez, this is pretty serious, actually. This is long hours, 6:30 in the morning till 6:30, 7:00 at night, and failing, learning to fail, because we fail a lot in everyday life, but at least you were told from the get-go in that drama school, you can mess up here and you can try it again. You're in a company of 18, 19 other actors. And I'd recommend it. I'd certainly recommend the Gaiety and other acting schools, but not everybody has to go. And I know loads of talented actors. First of all, it's a big ask for money sometimes, for financially, and if you don't come from a background where you can afford that, or you might have to do the college course and then do a job afterwards, or work for a couple of years to get in there. So I don't think it's a necessity to be an actor or be in the arts and have to go to drama school. But I learned a lot in there, and I'm glad I went. It was
And
great.
it seems as well, there is a kind of always that juncture of kind of arriving and going, as you said yourself, kind of going, oh, okay, this is not just something that I'm kind of doing for the crack, you know. And even if you really want to do it, if your heart wants to do it, being put up against those, because saying about failing is one thing, but actually being that vulnerable to kind of go, oh, fuck it, you know, it's hard.
It's a lesson. I think it took me, we did 2 years, and in the first year, I wasn't so willing to fail in front of others, shall we say. I wasn't so open to being vulnerable, and that's a huge part of it. Yeah, it was an experience, because day one you're in there and Patrick gets you all lined up, 20 of you, and you're standing like samurai, and you have to go like this, you know. And then other classes was, I don't know, Moyes or Stanislavski or something, and one of the teachers is going, I think it was Chekhov actually, you know, the wind propels you, and you have to go with that intention. I remember at one point we were told to pretend like we were a sack of potatoes. And I saw one guy like bouncing across the class pretending he was a sack of potatoes, and I was like, Jesus, if only me mates back home could see this, what I'm up to. It's not even 9 in the morning, like, you know. I'm like, what are we doing? But
yeah. No, it is. You kind of get those flashes in and out of kind of the reality you came from and the reality that you're kind of currently in at that time. And but I suppose, I mean, what I'm interested in, what you said about kind of getting into acting for screen, that was kind of what your dream was, or what your kind of goal was. And was there a reason at stage that, like, even when you tried it, was it kind of something, okay, that's like, I'm not talking professionally, I'm talking about as a kid, was it still that kind of the silver screen was kind of what was drawing you?
Yeah, I think so, because I looked up a lot of movies, and I used to like Hollywood movies,
Yeah.
but I didn't really know Irish film, and I wasn't, the little bit that I know, like the tiny little bit that I knew of Irish film, I wasn't that taken back or amazed by it. I didn't think it was all that great. It was only until I saw Garage. I was in first year in the Gaiety, and I saw it in the Lighthouse. No, I saw it in the IFI on its opening night, and it blew me away, because it reminded me of so many characters that I'd met, say, in the pub growing up as a kid in Cork, or in my hometown in Dungarvan, and that element of that slightly narrow-minded, darker side of shame, or putting people when they're down. And I was like, whoa, that's why Irish film is special, because it's not the high end big budget stuff. It's the smaller characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who are at a disadvantage. And I said, okay, I'd love to be able to work in this, and one day I'd love to be able to mix and match.
Yeah.
Because that childhood imagination of me doing bigger stuff, hold on to that, but it's more about the smaller stories. You know, I thought there's a lot of integrity into Lenny's work. And again, in school, I went to Virgin Megastore one day, and I was looking for books on film, and I came across Mark Cousins' The Story of Film. I was like, whoa, this is thick. This is good. I'll pick up this one. I might learn a lot. Might be a few Hollywood movies here, but there weren't any American ones. It was from movies around the world, and I'd never heard of half of them. And then I bought the movie as well. It's 14 hours long, and I recommend it for people who are interested, especially in this time right now, to look up.
He's made actually made it available for free online. It's at the moment. Martin, is it
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, that's so I'd always an interest, always an interest.
Yeah, but come here then. So, okay, leaving again, one of these kind of other moments is like leaving that kind of, breeding ground of the Gaiety school or any acting school into the kind of scene. And how did that kind of what happened then for you, Mo? Like kind of getting into theatre at the beginning. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think what did I do? Got out of Gaiety. I did a show in Smock Alley, which was Lisa Tierney's Joe's Four Last Things,
That's a great.
and yeah, yeah, it was the first show I'd done, and I had to play a dog, a speaking dog, who is a friend of the main character, the girl who lives in a small rural farm, and it was this is way before Patrick's Day. This was 2009, and again going back to the theme of garage and uh, that darker side of the Irish psyche. It dealt with themes of depression and mental health. And around that time, I mean, for me, I was 19. There weren't many people talking about
Yeah.
that topic. And Lisa, for me, was the first that I had worked with who had dealt with it, and that was I enjoyed that. It was in Dublin Fringe. Um, I had an agent when I got out of college, which was really good. Um, Again, I don't think it's necessary, but it's really, really helps. I think a lot of people they got to work hard for a few years to get one, but I was lucky I had it outside of the Gaiety, and I was auditioning for shows like the Tudors,
Yeah.
and while I was auditioning for stuff like that, I was doing profit share shows. I did three Shakespeare's in a row. I do them every summer, and Valerie O'Connor directed those, and they were wonderful. We did them. The first one was Midsummer Night's Dream. We did it on Bray Seafront, on the waterfront. What was that? Oberon, and then Twelfth Night, Andrew Aguecheek, and then Richard III in Dublin Castle. And what the reason I loved them was, you know, I suppose there's a few things to talk about, but one is expectation, and the expectation of me of what I'm going to do when I leave school. What am I going to do if I don't get into acting school? Or what am I going to do when I leave this? What am I going to do? Where the job's going to come from?
Yeah.
And what I loved about the profit share that Valerie directed was every Friday she'd ask us to come in, and we wouldn't have much money, but they said, no, bring in whatever you have in your fridge. I said, what? So bring in meat, bring in cheese, you bring in bread, you bring in some grapes. Don't go to the shops. Let's come in, let's break bread, let's come into the round, let's chat as a troupe, as like a traveling troupe, like Stratford upon Avon or something. And it took all the fear away about what's happening next. It's like, no, we're in this together, we're doing this together, so that was a lovely feeling to have every summer. But the flip side of that all sounds rosy and beautiful, on Bray Seafront. You know what Bray's like? The lads in Bray were like, what are they doing there, in the tent, breaking bread. But was, being out of work.
Yeah.
Being out of work. I always, at the back of my mind, when I was in school, I said to myself, right, if you believe that you're not going to do well, or there's no light at the end of the tunnel, they'll believe that, and you probably won't. But if you believe in yourself and know that may not happen the first time or the second time, maybe it's an ongoing series of failures and like an ongoing series of like mini triumphs, you're growing. And I said, eventually it'll all work out because you do what you love. You're doing what you love. And going for auditions, when I got out of college, I was never really that. It never really got to me if I got a no, or if I didn't get an audition, if I didn't get a part. Never really got to me. Started to get to me a little bit more. Started taking it more seriously, and I became more competitive. But it was the balancing act of that, knowing that my friends who did go straight into college and now coming out and going into finance or in the factory here, or they were okay. They were doing their thing. They got their degree, but I think a lot of it is just the people who are in the Irish, the creatives in Ireland, in the theatre industry, and in film. There's some fantastic quality coming out of this country,
But that is hard, though. I mean, you're right, because I think certainly for the general public, having a misconception of people who kind of, in some ways work in theatre, particularly in film and TV, kind of go, actually, you're grand. You kind of, they see on a film and they can watch it any night on Netflix. They think you're making money every night.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're tough years. I mean, was there ever, you know, because I say you kind of did quite a lot of theatre right out of the back of college, and you were doing, you know, bits on movies and stuff like that. But I suppose was there moments there where you were kind of going, that self belief was kind of going, oh Jesus Christ.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean, bits here and there on TV and stuff, but it's nothing. I mean, you can't really make there's no longevity there. There's no long-term plan, and you know, you're taking social welfare for a good few years while I was doing these plays. And again, you have the added advantage that I was a lot younger then. So in a way, I didn't have as many worries. But you know, the truth is, I was a by the time I'd left the Gaiety, I was a father. I was you know, I had a little baby, and you had to ask yourself, well, what the hell am I doing? You know, is this just a child's dream? What I'm making here? But I was enjoying it. The truth was, I was enjoying it, and I always believed, like, from whether it was carrying on in theatre or having a balance between both, I always thought that it depends on the right time, meeting the right writer, coming across the right bit of work that speaks to you, and it hadn't happened yet. And I said to myself, I'm not going to give up until something I feel that the right thing has come along. And maybe it was a fool's hope, but I always, like, the stuff that I wanted to be involved in about Ireland, about shame, or about judgment, or about mental health. I knew that there was something out there I wanted to do. I knew there was, and it came about eventually. You know, it came about eventually. But
talk to me about that. I mean, about Patrick's Day and kind of the journey to that and how that happened for you.
Well, again, it's as you were saying, is, did you ever have a time where you believed you couldn't carry on? And yet, many times. And Patrick's Day came along when I said to myself, right, I'm going to give this one more shot. I wasn't feeling my best, so I said, right, let's start training, let's start running, let's ease up on the drink for a while, let's, like, focus on any opportunity, put your name out there, read whatever plays come and collaborate. And it just came through the agents that a man called Terry McMahon, had written a project about mental health. And I was aware of Terry because I saw all of the stuff about Charlie Casanova, about his first movie that he made for whatever, €999, and got a pirate crew together, and they did it for 3 weeks. And I saw the bashing that he got online for making this film, about post-Celtic Tiger and characters who take advantage of it. And it's a lot more prevalent even now today. But besides that, I said, oh, okay, well, if this guy has written a project about mental health, well, I can't wait to read it. I'll be very interested to see where it's coming from. And yeah, it blew me away. I remember reading it in my apartment there in Dublin. And you know, I've told the story plenty of times, but when I read it, I said, this guy gets it. He gets what's going on in the atmosphere in Ireland. It gets about judgment. When it came out, it suddenly all became about stigma, but it was also about class, and it was also about the mother character and the fear of letting go of the son, and the son actually being okay. It was just mollycoddled. And yeah, it really moved me, and I just said, okay, you have to go for this. And I said to myself, thank you, God, this is what I've been waiting for, but now I have to go for it. You know, it's all well and good going, thank you, but you know, I was a nobody. I still have to go for it. And I did, and communication evolved between me and Terry, and I just suddenly felt that here's definitely a man, an artist, or a director, and an actor, or writer who, you know, if you click with him, he'll fight for you, and if you click with him, he'll push you, and he'll inspire you. He'll scare the crap out of you, even, but he'll inspire you to push yourself to your own limits. And I thought that was really exciting. I really wanted to work with him, and I wouldn't let it go. I was like a dog. I was like, you know, I was emailing him. I was like, give me one more shot, you know, give me one more. And it's funny because as you look back and you see that you were that guy who got got lucky in a sense, even though you fought for it. You realize as the years go by, there's many different projects that happen like that, and someone else gets it over you instead of you. You know what I mean? That's the nature of it.
Yeah.
It was just for that particular time. It just gelled, and he fought for me, and it was an experience that changed my life for many different ways.
I mean, it's an extraordinary piece of work, and it kind of you can really feel it off the screen. It kind of, I think there was lots of kind of ley lines that were kind of happening through it, and different people at different stages of career and life kind of coming together. But I think as well, it kind of hit a space where, you know, you mentioned back when you were in school, you know, mental health wasn't really, you know, spoken about at all, or if it was, certainly not among young men. But to have that put so baldly and beautifully baldly on a screen, and the response then that it got, I think was, and also, as you say, kind of that, you know, about stigma and shame, but it kind of dealt very, very subtly and very brilliantly with class. But your performance, I mean, Jesus Christ, like, were you aware of how raw you were being? If that's a stupid question, you know, but that kind of sense of, like, it was virtually live in relation to the way that you kind of sucked us in with you.
Listen, I knew that it was the first movie I'd done, but I knew that I'd come home some days and it was after a tough day, and you go straight in again for the next day, and that's a memory, you know. I suppose the best way to answer this is, on my first day, my Jerry Francis is the driver, and he's my good friend now because he's worked on many films with me. I love him to bits, and he picked me up, and straight after that he picked up Aaron Monaghan.
Okay.
And Aaron lives close to me in Kilmainham. I went, "How are you, Aaron?" He goes, "Hey, Mo." And I was a bit quiet, you know, because it was my first day. And he was like, "Have you ever done this before?" I said, "Done what?" He was like, "Have you ever led a movie before?" I said, "No." And he goes, "Are you shitting it?" And I goes, "No." And he goes, I go, "Yeah, I kind of am." And he goes, "Take it day by day. Don't try and do it all in the one day, the whole script. Don't try and do that. You'll drive yourself mad. Take whatever's on the call sheet on that day and do it. Each scene, do it as best as you can." Now, as an actor, we're naturally going to want to learn all our lines, especially if we're the lead in the job. And I did. If I'm a lead in a role, I always have it off book since since West Side Story. No, I do, but on you know, on smaller parts you don't. But he had a really good point, because you take the pressure off then, just day by day. But when you asked me if I was aware of how raw I was being, the lines, I was aware of how and I mean this, I was aware of how good the script was.
Yeah.
And I knew that if all it needed was trust, for me to trust myself and for me to trust Terry. And we had a real, like, it was a rare thing between a director and an actor to have that trust. And I was lucky. But he would push you every day. He would inspire you, and he'd say really sort of unusual things to get you in the mood, depending on Patrick's day. But the one thing I always loved about it was he kept reminding me. He says, "Everybody thinks Patrick's schizophrenic. He's not. He's just worried that he might be, and everyone else thinks he is." He goes, "Don't play it that he is. You know, why would you do that? Just play it that he's not." And I thought that was a great note, and it relaxed me. And then I was, for however green I was going into it, I had beautiful support, and I was lucky to have that support. You know, I was a 25-year-old, but I had Kerry Fox and Philip Jackson and Catherine Walker and Aaron, who had done so much. You know, they were looking out for me. But you go in every day, and if you're, you know, if you're passionate about a project, Mark, and you really like, you wake up every morning going, "I can't wait to work with these actors on this script." The script felt important to me, you know. So.
And did that? I'm interested in a couple of things around that. You know, does that remain your kind of process to learn to kind of ingest an awful lot of stuff before you go in? Is that kind of what you do? Does that continue kind of on your career still now, that the lines would be kind of?
No. For Patrick's side, I found it very close to home. I found it so that all of that work, I just had to learn my lines, you know, because I did know many people like Patrick.
Yeah.
but processes change. The main thing about it was the fun that we had. It was such a dark subject matter,
Yeah.
but the fun that you could have with a captain of a ship like Terry, who from no matter what role you are in the crew, if you're a caterer or if you're props or if you're art department, he made everybody feel like they're working and operating at the top of their game.
Yeah.
And I suppose coming out of it, then it made me feel like, oh, this is where I want to be.
Okay.
I'm in the right place.
And come in then, like, I mean, from your first kind of movie, what was the perception then when you saw it? I mean, was that difficult? Like, was that interesting to see, you know, what you'd done in front of you?
I remember Terry gave me a little DVD and he goes, here, have that, watch that. And I goes, what is it? And he goes, oh, it's Patrick's Day. I goes, whoa, really? And I brought it down home in this room. I was in this room here in Waterford, and Mom was with me, Dad was with me. I was like, Mom, Dad, watch the movie I did. We did shot for 4 weeks. Watch this. And it's so different then, you know? It's so different when you read a script and then you watch it, because when you have the work of, say, Ray Harmon, who adds the little notes from the music, and then you see Michael's cinematography and Emer Reynolds' editing, it's like it takes on a whole new shape and takes on a whole new form. And it wasn't as I imagined the script being. It was different. It was his own little thing. And it surprised me. And I remember watching it, I didn't know how to feel about it, you know, the first time. So I watched it again and I goes, no, that's yeah, I'm proud of that.
And then it took off, you know, and it really took off. I mean, that must have been sort of a ride.
Yeah, that was a ride. Yeah, Terry, he rang me and he said, motherfucker, as he speaks. I'm like, what's up, T? He's like, we're going to South by Southwest. I was like, cool, yeah. Where's that? He was like, it's over in Texas. I'm like, yeah, yeehaw. And I was like, looking back, it was the perfect springboard, because South by Southwest, I didn't realize how respected it was, and how any movie, especially an Irish movie, you're lucky to get your first screening in South by. It's an amazing place. But talk about a great experience for, was I 26, 20? I was 26 as an actor. I just done, it was my first movie, and all of a sudden the openness I felt, where I felt like, oh, this is exactly where I need to be. Being in Texas with Terry, meeting people who had watched the film, who were interested in mental health, who were mental health spokespersons, who connected with it, regardless of being involved with mental health, who connected with it. And I didn't know how to feel. I was nervous about people seeing it for the first time, but it was cool because it was my first time in the States. It was my first time in America. And I remember my dad ringing Terry on the phone. He goes, you look after him when he's over there, because I know what he's like. He's a wild boy, you know. And Terry was like, no problem, Pops. And we went off and had a magical time. You know, I remember the beautiful thing about Terry as well is, like, he's invested and interested in other people, no matter what they do, where he asks them about themselves. He's not like me. He's like, and slowly, no matter what bar we went to with our film, no matter where, when we went to Manny Bar, there were always a rake of people around. It's just like, we became new friends, and they took us out shooting one day, you know. And I remember he was in the front of his pickup truck and I was in the back with Michael Lavelle. We were in Texas, and there was this lovely girl, Caitlin, who we're friends with, Texan. And he goes, do you mind if I put on a tune? And he sticks on Damien Dempsey, Canadian Geese. And, you know, lying flat on my back by the field, by the tracks, Canadian geese flew by. In my mind, I up and joined with them as we glide out to Ireland's eye. And we're in the middle of Texas. And it was just, and then there's a line that we can be free with a little car key. Rivers and parks will take us far. There's friends and lovers we've yet to meet, but tonight they're watching the same stars. And I just felt like, whatever that inkling of an idea that I felt as an actor, going, thank you, or fighting for a part. Like, it never would have happened if I didn't believe. Yeah, and if the part wasn't so great, but it's a beautiful thing to believe in yourself, where you can, a few years down the line, you could find yourself with a project and it connects with people, you know what I mean, from the germ of an idea. And I was just glad that turned out so well, that I didn't have a self-defeatist attitude going, this isn't going to work, or, I'm not going to get it. you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it took off and it went everywhere, and it was an incredible year, and I we went all over the world. I'd gone over by the end, by the time the year finished, I'd gone with Terry to LA a couple of times, and I was in Australia, New Zealand, all over the place, and then we.
I mean, it's interesting though from that, and obviously the IFTA award, and you know the kind of the performance and the. But what's interesting is, and like I mean, it's not such a long time ago, but the quality of work that you've been involved in and the variety of work that you've been involved in since then is extraordinary. Do you know, I think just, and you mentioned about the two tracks of your career, the piece of around not so much social justice, but the kind of parts that you know mean something more from an activist is the wrong word, but from a kind of you know a personal life in the world, and then the more Hollywood kind of big screen, you know, Game of Thrones scale stuff. But you've glided effortlessly between, you know, I was having a look, because obviously I know you, and I kind of go, oh yeah, geez, he's done that as well. you kind of forget, you know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
Also, was it very soon after, like when did Handsome Devils come about?
Handsome Devil. Yeah, Handsome Devil came out. It was the next movie I did after that.
Yeah. Again, as a joy of setting of something completely different.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun, and you know, when asked me what I was into when I was a kid, every Monday night I'd stay and watch my comedy, and I thought that the best things RTE ever put out there was Patch the Freedom and Bachelor's Walk, and I used to watch them religiously. Oh, I used to love Keith McErlane in Bachelor's Walk. I loved him, and what I also loved was the Fast Show, Paul Whitehouse, genius actor. I was very, very drunk. I thought it was genius. And then with John Butler, Your Bad Self, I thought that was very, very like Fast Show, and I always wanted to work with him. And again, he's very interested in men and male relationships, and you know the silliness of machismo and of being your true self, and similar themes again, and the construct that's orchestrated by schools and Catholicism, and you know, and how we were, you know, how we're changed by that, and
yeah,
it's also just been a lot of silly fun, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a joy to play a character who reminded me some of the teachers that I had down below the Christian Brothers. You know, I had a lot of brilliant teachers.
But I think it really, and it kind of, you know, I think a film that should be re-released actually again, because I think it was, I loved it. I think it was kind of, it caught that kind of, all those constructs really, and with a very light touch as well, dealt with kind of stuff that, you know, dark enough. You know, there's stuff in there that that is kind of quite real. But tell me that when did Vikings happen?
That happened just after I did Patrick's Day, actually. Yeah, because you know, throughout all that time, when you know, it's not that I wasn't being honest with you. I never sailed through acting, and it's never, even after Patrick's Day, and up to now, it's an actor's life is full of, you know, what's the next job going to be. So I'm not saying it's from Patrick's Day that everything's magic. It never gets easier in a way, but I was auditioning for Vikings from 2000, from whenever the show started, and I was this close. I was doing Romeo and Juliet down Cork, Corkadorka, and I had to audition for this guy who had one line and gets his head chopped off in Vikings, and I was this close to getting it, and it would have been amazing at the time, but someone else got it and they got their head chopped off, and then just one more audition over the phone. It was this phone. The amazing thing about doing self-tape sometimes is when you just let go and have a laugh. I was doing it with my friend. We were both up for the part. We had a jar, and they got back and they said, yeah, they love your tape. They love it. And I was like, great, I'll get a few episodes. I got like about 40 episodes, 4 or 5 years work. I loved it.
Yeah,
absolutely loved it.
Huge production, you know, like a machine.
Massive, and with the end with Morgan O'Sullivan, a big reason why I love being involved with it was there was many actors going in and out of it, but many international actors who were the main cast. Right, I didn't know how big my part would become, and it was nice being an Irish actor in a joint Irish production that's spearheaded by Morgan O'Sullivan. You know, because he brought in. I mean, to me, he's the reason why there is an Irish film in Ardmore, and how there are so many big productions. So even from Braveheart, and he went over to America and he brought it over here. And like I see him operating since on my first ever job in the Tudors when I was like spear carrier. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I saw how he operated as a producer. And I remember, like, I watched all those movies. I watched Braveheart. It was always type of production as a kid, going back to that imagination we're talking about, that I would love to see myself being in. And I observed Morgan, and I've seen him show incredible acts of kindness to people who he didn't know, just randomly. He didn't do it because anyone was watching, but I loved working with him and on that, and the outdoors. And you see the craftsmen, and you see the part-time electricians, and they're the horsemen, and you're pretending to be on the field of battle in Iceland or England, and some of them they look no more like soldiers in the army or whatever. I'm like, come on, sit up, suck it in, will you? I was saying that to myself as well. I was like, okay, boys, we're going. All right, lunch is after this. And they're like, thank fuck.
That was never one of those moments when you kind of had things on your CVs that you're meant to be able to do and realize that, oh Jesus, I'm going to be called on this to actually deliver on that.
Hey, now that you say that, can you horse ride?
No, I can't.
I mean, I don't even know if I could either. Maybe I'm just winging it. Maybe I taught myself to believe I could. But the first time I ever galloped on a horse was on Vikings, on camera, with hundreds of guys behind me, facing off against hundreds of guys in front of me. And that was the first time I'd ever galloped. And there's a horseman there called Tony Doyle, amazing guy. He used to play rugby for Ireland, as did his father. He owns Doyle's pub out there in Bray.
It's funny. I know, actually, I'm from Bray. I was in school with Mark Doyle there. His younger brother was Tony.
There you go.
Tony Doyle used to run the disco that we used to always go to. Yeah, Jesus.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Never mind this. I want to hear more about that disco.
No, you don't.
We do, Mark. I think we all do. We do.
Actually, there's a whole new Access chats around that. There's a 4 or 5 years in Bray around the late 80s to early 90s where that disco was just, it was just something else. I'll tell you again afterwards.
Okay. Yeah.
The horse thing, like that must have been scary. That must have been.
That was scary. That was scary. But again, it was a test. Again, like I done one day on Game of Thrones in 2010, and I was just desperate for a job, And they said, that audition you did 3 months ago, you didn't get that part, but you got like one line. I was like, yes. When do I start? Tomorrow up in Belfast. You're on a horse. I was like, oh, shit. Why do I have that on my CV, And I'm always asked about this. It's always the question, but I rang my cousin, Stephen, who grew up with horses and was great around him. I said, look, I need to get on a horse tomorrow. What do I do? He's like, well, now, Morris, it's like this. Look, if you're scared of a horse, if you show the horse you're afraid of it, he'll know it. So don't be afraid. So I was like, all right, grand. got up on the horse the next day with the horse master from Game of Thrones. She was like, you all right? I'm like, yeah, why? She's like, well, you look very relaxed. I was like, oh, thank you. And I gave the horse a pat, but the pat was too hard. The fucking horse took off. And I'm like, yeah, we need a double for Moe. Yeah. So then on Vikings, I had that past experience,
Yeah.
I had that past experience. So I was like, right, listen to Tony and all the slagging that he gives you, even though he says like you look like a fella riding a camel or whatever, just take that on the chin, because that's what And I grew to love that. And then every job I did after, I did Black 47, the flag, where I had to have Pat Short on top of me, on the horse. Yeah. Jesus, yeah, no amount of training would prepare me for that.
But I think that's gas, actually, now you mentioned horses have followed you through your career since that.
Yeah, they have, yeah. And it was lovely. Every year on Vikings I had that. And what I loved was, because I'm from the countryside, and there's like Dublin, there's a historic relevance where you're from to that side of the past. And it was lovely to see the sides of Wicklow that I'd never seen, and be on a show about Vikings, and loads of like craftsmen and people who owned longboats were on it, and just seeing the amount of talent coming into Wicklow, interested in the show and being outdoors and creating something that was watched by a lot of people around the world. Yeah. It wasn't like this low budget thing, and everybody having fun doing it. I was like, that's that was fun.
And
That was fun.
did you, from those two kind of, you know, hits together, like was public recognition a thing in your life, or, you know, was there kind of any sense of that at all?
No, never then. No, not in. When Vikings finished up, there was, because we was seeing, you know, a lot of people in Brazil and Spain and Portugal love the show, and there's a strange amount of Brazilians in Dublin who would go, "Hey, there's Aethelwulf" or whatever. But in Dublin, they're like, "Nah, I never get any bother with Irish, except when I'm down home, you know."
Yeah.
Like, you know, Morris, why'd you call yourself Moe? You know, I get that down here, you know what I mean? And then up in Dublin, they're like, "Who's Morris?" You know? that's all right.
So around a time as well, I mean, you know, Michael Inside obviously was kind of just after that. Or kind of at the
that's
end?
when I first met you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But that, I suppose, that piece, I think it's an extraordinary piece of work, and I think particularly, your character in it is a kind of pivoted in the movie for me, because your character and the character of the grandfather, which is kind of, I love the way they relate to each other, not in theme, because your character is so deceptively not what you think it's going to be. You kind of worry about, you know, your character when you meet him first, but there's a kind of a softness to him that is really, really attractively dangerous, if that makes sense. That
right.
That kind of very cleverly done, and maybe like brilliant talent behind that film. But how did that come about for you?
You know, again, it kind of came out of Patrick's Day.
Okay.
And I'd done a few years on Vikings. I was like, this is great, but I'd love to do more of you know, work about Ireland, you know. And Frank Berry, I watched I Used to Live Here, and I saw it in Lighthouse Cinema when it came out, and I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was brilliant. I loved everything about it, how he worked in amongst the youngsters in Tala, in Killinarden, how he worked for kids to get into acting and to be around cameras, and pulled his resources of being a teacher out there, that just made a movie about what was going on, about that bridge out there in the M50 and youngsters and what their environment was. I messaged him and I said, here, I thought that was fantastic, and if someday down the line I'd love to work with something if there's a role there, and I think you're great. And he's a great man. He's a really great man, and he's well respected by, you know, from what I've gathered since then. He's, you know, he was loved by his students out there as a teacher, and he got back to me just when I was finishing up on Vikings, actually, and it couldn't have come at a better time, because no sooner had they killed me in Vikings that I was like, "Grand, I'm going into work with a special script that's and it's so rare actually how he works. It's, again, you know yourself, because you know Frank. It's like Mike Lee or there's no one really that works like Frank. He will get it to when it's perfect, to when he's researched it, you know, 100%. And he did that with I Used to Live Here, and with Michael Inside, with the Pathways program. I'd never come in and read a script that was made by real life experiences of like, you know, the Pathways prisoners. And he said, there's a part in it for you, I'd love for you to play it. And I read it. I thought it was a really special part, and I was actually quite scared and nervous about it, because I met Frank on the first day before my first day shooting down in Cork Prison, and what I just said to him, look, this part could go either way. It could go so far to the dark side where it's not being fair representing these people, or, you know, it could be demonstrative. It could be, you know, when people are just mean for the sake of being mean on camera, or like violence being cool on camera, or, you know, or drugs. And what I just said to him, Frank, it's a real character, and he's just a beautiful, generous man. He was open to all my thoughts, and we both came to an agreement that, like Francis, Michael's grandfather, if David McRae was also in a way a father figure, and could have been what Michael was, say, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And and he's kind and there for Michael to grow up to defend himself and that, but that comes at a price. And I thought that was a great character. I was only only shot for 5 days on that, but I mean,
But even that, I mean, to turn that around in 5 days, that says a lot about the preparation of both you and Frank. Jimmy is ready to cook.
Frank was fantastic. Frank got all of the background actors in that were the prisoners from Pathways. And I've never worked on that on an Irish film. I didn't think people would let that happen. And then you realize it's just so much more organic, and you get to hear from the lads, and they're able to come up and go, here, this happened to me. Or I think, one of them kept coming up to me going, you wouldn't wear your zip that high up, you'd wear it here. And I met some beautiful, beautiful lads on that, actually. Yeah. And it's funny because my father used to work in there as well as the counsellor in there,
Wow,
in Old Cork Prison, so.
And come here, Black 47, great film, big, when I mean big production, as in, it's outdoors again, the horses and but I suppose, you look at your next kind of batch of work, like say, Black 47, there's Rosie, obviously, and then Dark Lies, that examination of Ireland kind of is really intriguing across all that, and they're all different. But going from a modern day parlance and kind of Rosie and Michael Inside, and to go right back to Black 47, that must, for you, I imagine that's an incredible experience to do, is it?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, absolutely. I'd heard about Black 47 for about all the years through Vikings. I'd heard whispers of it, about this project that was set during the famine. And there's this fantastic short on Ranger with Owen MacDonald that it was based on, that PJ Dillon had directed and wrote. It's on YouTube. It's fantastic. So to make a feature-length version of that, and there was action, and we had enough time to prep, and there was a decent budget for it with the Luxembourg co-production. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, a lot of I'd heard a lot about it during Vikings, and then it just so happened when I ended, MacDara and Lance gave me his role in it. Yeah, and incredible that, strange that it was, one of the first famine movies, really.
Yeah.
Strange. Yeah.
I mean, I think and not just about the famine. It was a story in the famine rather than kind of, the more news you were saying earlier on about prison.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And sorry, just in relation to Rosie then, which again, just I know Paddy back years ago, but I know some of that was shot kind of in Ballymun, but just yourself and Sarah, there was something magic in that kind of, and just the containment of that car, and just those harrowing. Because I mean, that was, and of a moment, kind of like in the way, Patrick's Day around the whole area of mental health, but around, Rosie kind of came at a time when the horrificness of the homelessness situation, was becoming more explicit in Ireland, say, in the mainstream, but also the hidden homelessness of people like Rosie and like her family who are looking for accommodation every day. And just, that was very beautiful work. I mean, was that kind of difficult for them to do?
It was in ways, yeah, because you were reminded of how current and how timely it was when you're doing it, and you want to do a good job, and also not playing too much in the fact that portraying them in a certain way. I found how they dress and how they talk and how they are as a family, more important than anything else, that they want to get through each day. It's like, it's like what people are saying right now. We just want to get through each day, survive this. And with Roddy's writing, and Paddy would always remind us that, look, they're doing their best. He's holding down a job. She's trying to get put into school. And just it was the small things in that script that added up, and how Sarah, she was, support. It was just, I tell you what it was, Mark, was be there to support Sarah. Right? She was running that gauntlet, and the kids, working with kids, and I actually found out that working with the kids was the joyous thing about that job. It relaxed myself and Sarah, and they were all troopers. They were great actors. They had that sense of play, which you can't teach to anyone. So it's shooting in Dublin as well. I mean, technically shooting in Dublin, shooting on the Lewis, shooting it with anyone in the background. They weren't extras; they just happened to be there. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, there was. It's funny the scene it's funny. The scene that sticks with me out of it. I'm not sure why. It was a scene in late at night in a fast food joint. Actually, Paulie, Lethal Dialect was kind of, I think, the waiter in it. But
that's right. Yeah.
Seeing the family around it. There's just something in that kind of just caught it all. You know, that kind of. I don't know. And to this day, I don't know what it is about that scene, but just that placement of something that should be happening in the home into, you know, we all hear about with hotels, and some hear about the horribleness of sleeping in cars, but just that sense of being in a greasy spoon and having to leave and nowhere to go, and yeah.
And the kid is trying to get her homework done and trying to brush their teeth and
yeah. But there was a grace. I think what you found in that, and I think, you know, I think you say about Sarah's performance, which is amazing, but the kind of I think to give voice to those people in a graceful way rather than a judgmental way. You know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah. And Paddy, you know, Paddy used to bring his kids on set. You know, he used to direct with one of his babes in his arms, and it was very. You could get a sense of the family man that he is, and that he always had that at the back of his mind of being a father. And it's the family first. It's the people first. And we were shooting it and making it at a time when it was very heightened in Ireland, you know, on Twitter and everything, and about government, and everyone had their say. Whereas I guess we wanted to just make a small contained piece that, as you say, set in that environment, you know, about real people.
And I mean, the range of work, as I said, Mo, you know, an interesting work, like, you know, most recently on TV with Dublin Murders, and again, a new, kind of, I would say a new kind of different genre in Irish TV, that kind of, you know, that highly produced, but like, you know, that kind of, and it was kind of fascinating to and another, I think
Could you make sense of it though?
Yes. I love David Lynch, so I kind of
oh, deadly.
But the character, again, I think you've a great skill or great naturalness in those duality characters. You're kind of going, fuck, what the hell? You know, there's a warmth off you in some of your parts, but you kind of go, that's not fucking right. You know what I mean? There's a and I think that well, maybe it is. But I think that relationship between, you know, you and the other protagonists in there was really well kind of drawn. You know,
it was good to do something that had enough time to shoot it as well. You know, I'm used to doing 4 weeks or 5 weeks or for a TV show. I don't know what was the other one that was on. I think they had something like 8 weeks to shoot a whole series. We had 7-8 months, you know, and there was get BBC money there, and it was nice to go from. I'd done a show like Vikings, and over that time I'd learned that, okay, go into airlines, just relax, be still, and give what you can and give what's required. And Dublin Murders was cool as well because he said enough, and he had the character had a backbone. I didn't read too much of the character in the books. I knew he was from Galway, but very soon he was from Dungarvan. And you know, I said, you know, in the books he's loads of dialogue where I didn't want to be coming in and going, I've one line here. I'm not going to read the books or one line, but Sarah, you know, Sarah and Killian and Kit, very much the captains on that, you know. And you know, I used to always like, look, sometimes they'd be wrecked going into work, but because we'd be shooting so long, you know, and then you'd realize that would help because they're playing tired cops. And Belfast, well, I'd done a lot of work up in Belfast as well, and had a connection there with the dig, and I worked with a lot of the crew on that from Dublin Murders. So it was fun to do that. It was sort of unusual, it being Dublin Murders, but shooting up in Belfast and that. But it was great fun.
Also, that, you know, you mentioned the dig there, and again, kind of, you know, it's I suppose not a newish Irish genre, but the kind of horror, or, you know, perceived horror kind of that, and that was, you know, that was dark as night, you know, that.
Yeah, I love that.
And again, I mean, was that an enjoyable, not enjoyable? Like, I mean, I suppose, I mean, you mentioned joy in relation to shooting stuff that is dark material. So I suppose you have to have that in your process or in your tribe when you're shooting it to kind of make it anyway bearable, I suppose.
Yeah, Dublin Murders was dark, but you had Sarah on it, who's incredible fun. Eugene, when all the coppers came together, the storyline was so serious that as soon as the camera stopped rolling, it was just great crack, you know, and you had to have that to keep it going. The Dig, however, was very, very dark. It was very, very cold, and there's no wind cover, there's no sets, there's no interiors, it's all exterior, and it was a huge challenge. And you add to that the fact two brothers who had done a number of shorts and had worked in art department and worked as an editor. A producer, it was his first feature, two directors' first feature, and just jumping in and never known these guys before, and making something with 3 weeks to shoot. You know, it was probably the most fun I'd had under a challenge like that, because what I loved about it was the prep time with Larkin in Belfast, with a few days prep, and the budget that it was. I mean, the budget was so small on the Dig. And NI Screen have this fantastic initiative where it's called a New Talent Focus Scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And they they get a couple of quid together. I mean, I'm talking like a small number here. But they give it to a writer and a directing team who have never done a movie before. And I was just thinking, going, that's fantastic. That's fantastic to have that. I mean, I can't even count on my fingers how many people I know who are just looking for an opportunity, a chance to make something, because you know you're knocking on doors trying to get your thing greenlit or something down here in the Republic. Whereas I just thought that was great that NI Screen had that thing going every year, and again it was something that it was very collaborative. They were first-time filmmakers, but they on set they took the time to check in and go, how do you feel about this, as opposed to telling you how to do it, telling you where to stand. I thought that's why it was the most joy, because they trusted themselves enough and they had done enough prep that they could, you know, check in with the actors and collaborate.
Yeah, I won't keep much longer, but I just want to kind of chat to you about writers, because you're talking a lot about, you know, scripts, and I think you kind of seem to have a great affinity with that text and with a sense of, you know, and obviously, you know, Dark Lies the Island is another one, that kind of sense of, yeah, that the writing is important. Do you mean that kind of the cinematography and the direction can only do so much if the script's not there? Is that something that, you know, you kind of, yeah, you've worked with a huge range of different kind of screenwriters, writers, and adapted writers, and yeah, do you get a sense when you read something, Mo, you kind of go, geez, yeah, that's this kind of kicking into me still, like the same way Patrick's Day did?
Absolutely. If I read something special, I'd be thinking about the next day or the next day after that, going, what was it about that? What was it? Because sometimes you can't put your finger on it and go, it's just an essence, or you just go, oh, they got it. I don't know what it is they're getting, what they're getting at, but they got it. Like with Kevin Barry and with John talking about school and what it's like to be growing up in an Irish school. I was like, that's fantastic. It gets the fun and taking the piss out of the teachers, but is doing it in a way that's a lighthearted commentary on where we're at. You know, sometimes I read it and I can't make sense of it. So some scripts, and I go, all right, that's not for me, and that's happened quite a bit now over the past while. You know, having to say no to things, but the writers I worked with, there's just, with Irish writers, I always found with Terry or John or any of them, there's something that there's a similarity between every one of them of what they're talking about Irish life, and the ones that I've enjoyed doing, it's been all in the writing mark. But it's just a commentary, I think, on fighting, on not being down on yourself, of asking questions about who's in control of you, whether it be people being under power about in prisons, or it's always in some form of a prison, I know that's a very random point to make,
not at all.
but for Irish writers, the ones that I've loved are like with John Butler. It's a prison of a mindset of when you're growing up in school. In Frank, it's literally, you know, in a prison, and how the circumstances to find yourself there over environments where your upbringing. With Patrick Stakes, how people view people who may or may not be mentally unwell, and the ones that I like are the writers that have that sense of compassion. Just if there's compassion in the script, you know, and that's what I look for. That's what I love.
Great word, that though. Compassion. I mean,
compassion.
Obviously, there's a lot of stuff like, you know, that we haven't got into, like Metal Heart and Raw, and, you know, there's all, you know, stuff that you've kind of done. Metal Heart's an interesting one, actually. When was that?
That was 2017.
Okay, so
yeah,
and that again, where did that come up through? Like, how did that kind of?
After Black 47, just before the dig. Actually, it was right just before the dig. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that, you know, like any project, say by a writer or by a director in this circumstance, like I always like to think that I have a good reason. Like, they haven't all worked for me. They can't always be the way you want them to be. But I've always had a good reason. And with Hugh, was that I was a long time admirer of him as an actor. I watched him in Lamb and in Chocolat as the dancing priest. I watched him in everything on stage. He's fantastic. And also I saw Sinead O'Connor music videos that he made. And I love this story. And I wanted to work in the same year. I wanted to work with David Flynn, and I wanted to work with Jordan Jones, because I thought they were brilliant and I used to live here.
Yeah.
And I kind of read the part differently in Metal Heart. I read it that I was used to playing characters that, right, they're bad eggs, but they come through and they're likable in the end. I probably didn't tell Hugh or anyone in the project, but I kind of wanted to do it the opposite way, because I read the character as sort of a bit all over the place, and one of those guys that you think is going to be good, but he ends up going the other way. And I suppose a cautionary tale for Jordan's character. And, you know, I still to this day don't know whether it worked or not for me. But the movie and Jordan's role and her relationship with the sister, I loved it. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
It was a lesson, I suppose, and it's not always the fun you have in doing it. It's the fun the audience have watching it, and to be aware of that. You know, when you're playing characters like that, you know what I mean? Because I can sit here and say, "Oh, it was great fun," but it's at the end of the day, it's the audience, and that to me, if I was to direct, I thought I did a beautiful job, but every scene you look at it and you read it in the context of going, right, your lead actor is 16 years old. This character is coming in, he's morally dubious, and you go, you know, how do you play each scene? And it was a difficult to read sometimes of how dark do you want it to go and how comedic. And, you know, sometimes that doesn't always work. And I know with Hugh, we tried everything. He was so gracious as a director to go, be free, do it again and be freer, because he was an actor, you know. But sometimes I look at it and there's a nice sense of ease and just, I suppose, forgiveness really as an actor when you go, they can't all work. You tried, you did it, and, you know, you move on. You did your best and move on with the job, you know.
I think that's an interesting point, Mo, though, because certainly something that mightn't work for you doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to work for everyone else.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's incredible, you know.
Sometimes you don't know.
Yeah.
Even when you're on stage or you're directing, how the audience is reading it. But I thought about that one. Interestingly, myself and Hugh he was so great to chat to, because I thought about it really long and hard about what is the mindset, and sometimes what is the environment in Ireland at the moment around these kind of stories? What is the mindset going on here? And how many chefs are in the kitchen on certain projects? You know what I mean? And it's good to just let go, you know.
Come here, I'll let you go. It's just been an absolute joy to chat to you. And I think the word compassion kind of goes across a lot all of your work, Mo, and it's kind of a pleasure to watch you on screen. And I hope to have a couple with you when this kind of lockdown.
I would love that. And we haven't chatted much about this, but, you know, we're going to get through it. Um,
Yes, we are.
we're going to get through it, and I love what you're doing. I watched many of the interviews with. I watched Kelly Murphy's one. I thought she's an absolute diamond.
Yeah, she
So
is.
when you messaged me to do this, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Mark.
No bother. Cheers. Talk to you soon.
See you, mate.